Welcome everyone to our first breakout session of the day, CMO versus CIO. Today I'm pleased to introduce our two speakers, Carol Myers and Jay Linder. Both of them have avid experience working in technology. Carol, with Rapid7, actually began in 2011 as the CMO of Rapid7. She brings over 20 years of experience helping technology companies grow rapidly, and she actually serves as a member of our strategic advisory board as well. So thank you, Carol, for being here today. And then Jay Linder as well is actually an avid speaker, so I've heard from Carol at least that you speak pretty actively across the nation. He has over 30 years experience helping technology companies grow, experience including iRobot and Micro Incorporated. So I'm really excited to have him here speaking for us today. Thank you both. And they will definitely hear what they're speaking on. The CMO and CIO.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. So I actually also have 30 years experience. I would say Jay and I are exactly the same age, but I never say that.
Because it looks a lot better for our I think we can admit, right?
I'm trying to pretend. One of the things that Katie recommended we do is kick off with a little bit of information about what we do as a business and how we go to market, which might help us frame this discussion about the CIO and the CMO and what we should be doing together or not, potentially, depending on how you want to look at it. So in terms of what does Rapid7 do, we are a security software company. But unlike things you're probably most familiar with, because everybody knows antivirus, you probably know firewalls, very famous companies like Palo Alto Networks. Those are what we would call defensive technologies that people use to try and keep the bad guys out. What we make is sort of the brains behind the operation. Our software is all around helping IT security pros continuously see where they have potential break-ins in that infrastructure they've put in place to try and keep the bad guys out. Tells them what they should do about it. So what do they need to do to shore up their defenses, and then helps them track that progress over time. So just like in almost every other discipline, there's a lot of analytics these days. So what are we doing in marketing? What's working? What's not working? What should we do? And how do we trend over time? We essentially make that for security pros so that they can be understanding their security posture and how they're doing. And so what that means from a marketing perspective is it's very much B2B. We have a very defined persona and person that we target, obviously security pros, chief information security officers, those kinds of folks within an organization. And
it's real party.
People were on the couches all night last night. We probably were. They were coding. The way we go to market to those people might be a little different than what you typically see in B2B high technology. It's all inside sales. So we do not have outside salespeople, and our average sale price is around $35,000. The range is from a couple $1,000s up to well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we do it all by phone. So from a marketing perspective, my point of view coming into this is that marketing is very critical in that situation, right? We need to be constantly filling the pipeline for the salespeople and leads. And that means that technology, website, digital marketing are an absolute critical thing for us in our company. And so it's that point of view I bring. Anything you want to add on that, my partner CIO?
So what I'm going to bring is the truth. I'll bring the truth. So Carol runs out on the front edge, and she looks at the front edge and she speaks the front edge, and I'm the guy that actually has to put all this stuff together in the back room. And if you've ever met your plumber or your electrician, they're the guys that are really dirty. The architect comes in and he's looking pretty good, and then that plumber comes in and he's all a mess. And so I'm the mess part of the equation for Carol, and I think what we're going to talk about is how the architect and the plumber actually meet one another and love one another and get along with one another.
It's very true. It's very true. You're an excellent plumber too, though. Okay. So what is this entire session about? Well, the challenge came in. There was a blog post that Central Desktop did in February, and it was really built around some things that Gartner was saying in the market, which is essentially that, okay, in just a few years, the CMO is going to spend more money on technology than the CIO, which is a pretty audacious claim. they were also intimating in that statement was that my friend the plumber was going to be irrelevant and I was going to take his place. So we thought we ought to evaluate that. And what would that look like? Well, that's what that would look like.
Carol and I looked at this last night and decided that we should never have children. Because if this is what it's going to come out in, right? This is some kind of transgender amalgam, right? We're not really sure. So we've decided not to breed.
That's exactly what my brother looks like. So you can see what our point of view is. This may not be the best idea that anyone ever came up with. But what we like to do is really explore it by looking at what are our two worlds, how do we think those are changing, and what really should that relationship CIO, CMO be to help us all be more successful. So let me start with my point of view, because I always like to go first.
Yes.
So one of the things that Gartner claimed is going to spend more money than the CIO. And when you hear from Jay, you understand all the things that he has to worry about. That's a really, really big, audacious claim. So from my point of view, I'm still worried about a lot of the stuff I've always been worried about. I worry about brand. What is our brand? How well is it perceived? Who knows about us in the market? And as much as everyone says, there's no such thing, you don't control your brand anymore, that's true. I don't control my brand, but it doesn't mean I don't have to worry about it. I still worry about that every day and think about what am I doing, what's the organization doing, what is it, are we living up to it? Occupies a lot of my time. And with that, other things like demand generation, which I mentioned is really, really important. I've got to be filling that funnel every day. I'm worried about positioning, what is our positioning, what are our competitors doing, and I'm worried about the customer experience, what I can control and what I can't control. And so my view on technology is that technology is only as good as it helps me achieve these goals. And if it doesn't help me achieve these goals, I'm really not that interested in the technology. So Gartner also threw out a lot of numbers about how much money people spend, so I thought I'd just share mine. Half my budget goes to people, which I don't think is unusual, definitely not in B2B, and in a lot of other organizations, because if we're all doing inbound marketing, we need a lot of content, we need a lot of design work, we need to be planning all this out. It takes people to do that. If I take the 50% that's not people, 10% of that right now is spent on technology. And I'm using a lot of technology, marketing automation, community technology, things for data cleansing and data augmentation, and real-time, ad serving on the website, all kinds of things. And yet it's still 10% of my budget. 90% still goes to things like media and actually good old-fashioned, which all my CMO buddies like laugh at me about, events. We do 125 events globally every year. It's a little crazy, but that's what my world really looks like. So when I think about technology and the CIO and the partnership, this is what I'm faced with in trying to achieve those goals. This is an insane landscape. I could spend every day, all day, just evaluating technology. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of emails every day with people promising that they can save my world, fill my pipeline, make my ads more effective, and actually automatically translate my website. So, and as Jay knows, I can get a little caught up in the shiny baubles and be like, look, this can make bread and sell my product. How good? But I can't do that every day because I got to worry about all the other stuff. So this is really overwhelming, really overwhelming. And so one thing that Gartner did talk about that I think maybe does make a lot of sense is a lot of people have technologists within their marketing department. I don't have that yet. But I do have a marketing operations person and a digital marketing person who really help me evaluate that crazy landscape. What are the tools that we need to bring in? Which of the vendors are we going to evaluate? And then what are we going to test and experiment with? So I can see this happening. I can absolutely see this happening. But does that really mean that you still don't need a CIO and a technology department in your company? Probably not.
I say no.
Good answer. Good answer. And the reason that's true is you can't let this person, team be an island. Katie mentioned that I was at Unica. Unica was one of what I would consider sort of pioneers of this new age of marketing technology. But trust me, marketing technology has been around forever. And when I there weren't a lot of people doing a lot with technology. If we tried to talk to a CMO, they'd be like, "Oh, don't tell me about technology. That's someone else's problem." That's really absolutely shifted, no question about it. And we saw at the time that I was there a lot of marketing departments building out technology teams, but they can't be an island. And the reason they can't be an island is all of the things that we spoke about in terms of worrying about brand and customer experience. If I bring in technology that doesn't integrate with the rest of what the company's doing, what are they doing in service, what are they doing in building, what are they doing in sales, the customer experience is really poor. The information I'm collecting about people on the website isn't getting over to the sales team, and they're calling as if this person's never engaged with us before. So that kind of thing just can't happen, and it makes a lot of problems. In addition, there's a lot of other things that the technology group helps with. So, for example, security company, guess what? There's like a big bullseye on my back from hackers who want to break into the Rapid7 network just so they can post online that they beat a security company. Like, we're a huge target. And every bit of technology that I bring in, especially on the website, is generally interacting with our data and our back-end systems. And what does that mean? Well, that means if I bring in the wrong technology, I might put a great big vulnerability in the middle of things. And then Jay would have to deal with that, and that would be really bad for my brand as well. So I really rely on our technology team to help us in evaluating technology in a lot of ways, but in particular on security. Is it going to be okay? Does it meet our stringent security requirements? And even if you're not a security company, an awful lot of companies are targeted. If you do anything with money, if you have personally identifiable information that people can steal and make money off of, you're a target. So unless you want to build your own security group within your marketing technology group, within your marketing department, you may not want to go down that path. So it's a really fundamental belief that, yes, technology is really important, but you can't go off and just do whatever you want and hope for the best. It's not going to work. Agreed?
Right.
So that's my world, and now I'm going to let Jay talk about his world.
Right.
So you can see if these should collide or not.
Right. So let me first start by saying, let's take a moment and genuflect over Gartner, because it's what Gartner said. So I love Gartner, right, and I use them, but Gartner has never run an IT shop, and most of the people have never been inside a company, right? So it's great research, and it's good context, maybe not so much, right? Sometimes I get Gartner reports, and I wonder to myself, what color is the sky in your world? Because that's not the world that I live in, right? And I think, everything that Carol said is true, right? And I think one of the things that you see today, so I've been in IT for 30 years, and so when I started in IT, mainframe was the dominant technology, right? Big, monolithic, gigantic machines before most of you were born, right? And then it went to mini computers, and I actually grew up in the mini computer business. That was kind of my first job. And then the PC revolution came, and then client-server computing came, and then iPads and iPods and iPhones and whatevers, right? Right? And so that whole trend has driven an ease of use and a consumerization of technology, and that's a good thing. And as a CIO who kind of depends on his livelihood for having to manage and need to manage those things, lots of CIOs will tell you that consumerization is the enemy. I will tell you consumerization is not the enemy, but it changes the CIO's role. So in the old days, you couldn't get anything out of a computer unless you came through me or my organization. You just couldn't get it. Couldn't write it. In the mainframe days, you had no access to the computer. You couldn't get any of the data. Everything came out on a big green bar sheet of paper. Most of you younger people don't know what that is, right? But a big piece of paper, right? And you go through with a ruler and an adding machine, right? No shit, there was no Excel when I started, right? Okay. True, right? No Excel, right? Right? Carol remembers. So those weren't the good old days. It was the control old days. It was good old control days if you're a CIO, that's great. But I think we all look at that and now understand that fundamentally nobody could operate a business that way. So now we're all the way at the other end of the spectrum. And just as there was danger and inefficiency in this end of the spectrum, there's danger and inefficiency at this end of the spectrum. And it's not because I want to be in charge of everything, and it's not because I want you to route all your technology thoughts and decisions through me. To the contrary, I don't. But what is important is, a lot of the stuff that happens, out of your hands. So things start at your fingers, but then they travel through the magic of electronics and wireless into other places. And you're not really in charge of that. But I am. And it matters where that data goes. And it matters whether you leave it exposed in places that are dangerous. And it matters that it can't talk to other places. And it matters about who you bought it from and when you bought it and the terms under which you bought it, right? Technology is a hard thing. Try to negotiate with any of the evil empires, like Oracle, or IBM, or SAP, or any of these guys, Salesforce, right? It all seems easy. It just says, I just give them my credit card number, whoop, whoosh, I'm running Dropbox, look at me. The liability and the ongoing expense of those things is daunting. You just don't see it because you don't understand it. Because it ends up in somebody's P&L somewhere, downstream, right? So, my friends at Gartner, all due respect, but until depreciation lands in a marketing budget, you're not going to have a bigger budget than me. I'm just telling you. The depreciation all lands in my budget. All lands in my budget. So, my universe is about what do we do with the stuff that sits under the tools that you're using or that are downstream from the places that you are either collecting or creating data. So, things like integration, maintenance and support. Right, so Carol talked about the shiny bauble. The shiny bauble plays a big role in IT and in technology because everybody loves to chase it because it's really cool, and especially with consumerization, it's easy to understand. In the old days, that's a COBOL program, and who can understand a COBOL program other than a COBOL programmer? But boy, you can understand the tools that are available today. You can understand Box.com. You walk on and look, it's a miracle, right? So it's easy to understand. But once it's in, then what happens when your employees leave? Where's but he had a Box.com account, and now he still has a Box.com account because Box.com is in the cloud. Oh crap, we're going to have to shut that down. What else did he have? I don't know. What else did he have that I know about? What else did he have that I don't know about? Right? So, it all counts. Right? It all counts. And so, maintenance and support, vendors, all the kind of stuff that runs behind the wall that you don't see, like the wireless access point doesn't work, you're really pissed off because that's a cloud service and you can't get to it because they kind of let it down, right? All these things are things that go on in the CIO shop. You don't want that going on in the CMO shop. And all apologies to my marketing friends, there's a whole other set of functions going on in the business that actually kind of needs my help. So, some of the tools, I know this will surprise you, but in accounting, some of the tools aren't quite as advanced and quite as consumerized as some of the marketing tools that you see on the front end, right? So there's not too many SaaS general ledgers. Right? There's not a lot of cloud intercompany journal entry going on, right? So those folks need a little bit more of my services, traditional services, than perhaps here. So these are the things, I think if you're a good CIO, what the good CIOs tell me, right? These are the things that we care the most about. And these are the things that I think are important, not just in marketing apps, but in any app. And I think if a CIO is doing his or her job well, these are the things that she's thinking about. So, enablement. Because the fact is, we're a widely dispersed workforce now, more than we've ever been. So again, in the old days, back in the mainframe days, everybody sat in the same building. I mean, if you were in the next building, that was a catastrophic communication problem. Right? I mean, I'm not talking about another country and another language. I'm just talking, I'm at number 6 Crosby Drive, and you're at number 8 Crosby Drive. Oh my God, what happened? So enablement is really important, and ease of support is really important because we're widely dispersed. And if you're sitting in Ireland or Estonia or Australia, you're a lot harder to support when things don't go quite as they're supposed to. And I know probably in all of your companies, IT works flawlessly, but in a lot of places that I've run, where I'm not that bright, shit happens, as we say, right? So how easily will you support that? Simplicity is really important because I can't get out and do training. We can't sit you in a classroom and say, hey, let me walk you through how the ERP system works. Let me walk you through how the Marketo integration works with Oracle. We don't have time to do that. You're in widely disparate places. So how simple is it to use? Is it scalable and flexible? Because the death of any IT shop is the need to multiply implement or multiply upgrade or multiply train or multiply do anything. So, to the greatest degree possible, if I buy it once and I can scale it easily as we grow or as our needs change, those are the things that are important to me. And then the last two, this is really why I know that CIOs will always have jobs.
We will always have a job. And it won't be the same job that I had in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, but I'll always have a job. Because the fact of the matter is, if you don't have good data and you can't pass it to or get it from the places that it needs to go or it's sourced from, then you have nothing. You have nothing. And Carol and I were talking about this last night. So if your data is only 89% accurate, it might as well be 9% or 19% or 49%, right? Because if you can't trust it, if you can't act on it with no hesitation and without complete confidence that it's right, you have nothing, right? It doesn't matter if it's 99 or 89 or 19. If you look at it and go, I don't know if I can trust it to make decisions, then you're screwed. It's no good. And the fact is, lots of the marketing technologies and the marketing data is at the front end of the funnel. But a lot of the decision-making happens someplace else. And if you get into the boring things like extract, transform, and load, right, and data warehousing, and business intelligence, and big data, all these fun things, this is hard work. And if you don't have good data and you can't get it to the places that it needs to go for decision-making, then you don't have much. This does not belong in marketing. All apologies to Carol and marketeers. This is not what they do.
I don't want it.
You would not want me running a branding campaign, trust me, and you probably wouldn't want Carol to build your data warehouse for you or your business intelligence tools. Right? She's very right, she probably do. But that's probably not what we want. So here's what I think in places where it doesn't work well, and I've been in places where marketing and IT kind of, not exactly BFFs, right? Carol and I are BFFs. But this is what, if you want to make my life easier, and in true Jerry Maguire format, if you want me to help you, right? These are the kinds of things that I think make for a more productive relationship. And the first is thinking holistically. And we all have this tendency to say, I got mine, and whatever else happens is, that's somebody else's problem. So I don't know what's going to happen to the data when it gets to finance, but I don't care because I'm trying to generate leads. Okay, so get it. And we need to generate leads, and we need to generate a lot of leads, and we need to generate qualified leads. But our finance friends are very interested in what's the cost of those leads? And what's the win rate? And how can we project our financial forecast going forward? And what should our model be? The funnel model of, we start with leads and they turn into sales, right? That's critically important for finance, right? And if we don't think about the fact that someone else needs this stuff when I'm done with it, then it goes in the tank. And if you think holistically about it, I'm not asking you to be concerned for them, but I'm asking you to be aware of them. And when I raise it, because it's kind of my job to say, I need to track this and bring some other perspectives to it, if you'll just be receptive, right? And get us involved early. And this bullet here, we're actually trying to help. So when I say, yeah, but what's going to happen when it lands in finance, I'm not trying to make your life difficult. I'm just trying to think holistically and take care of the entity, right? Because somebody has to take care of the entity. There's an old adage in IT and probably in other things, we used to call it the 110-100 rule, right? So if you find a problem in the development process, it costs you $1 to fix. If you find it in the testing process, it costs you $10 to fix. And if you find it in production, it costs you $100, right? So I don't know what the rate of inflation is since 1984 when I heard this, but so now maybe it's 10,000, 100,000, and a million, right? But you get the point. And my job is to try to flush those things out up front. So I'm not trying to make your life difficult, and I'm not trying to hold you back, and I'm not trying to rain on your parade. But what I am trying to do is just to get you to think a little bit more holistically so that we can smoothly process that all the way down. Number two, understand that all of it is not good, right? So Carol and I were talking again about, I remember during the internet bubble, many of you weren't born at that time, but during the internet bubble, I had several people come to me and try to sell me technology that could connect any to any. Any to any, right? Any to any. So this meant no matter what your data was or what format it was in or where it came from, I could take it and connect it to anything else. They were actually selling this. It's impossible. Right? It's fundamentally, it's profoundly stupid. Right? It can't happen. It's like a law of nature. Okay? But I can't tell you how much money got thrown at any to any because it was such a sexy idea. But it's just profoundly, this is where I'm like, oh my God, come on. I mean, Just think about it. It's impossible. It's impossible, right? And so, marketeers in technology are the most expert at setting an expectation that's unrealistic, but it's attractive, right? And that's what marketing's job is. So,
I work very, very hard at that.
yes, so Carol's expert at that. Our stuff doesn't even actually exist anymore. So, that doesn't actually exist. So when we say we install software, you're like, all right, but we. But you have to be pragmatic about it, right? And so again, this is a place where, I understand I'm a curmudgeon, right? And I understand that I'm kind of a skeptic. But my skepticism is born of experience, where I'm like, show me, right? So when they're making an outrageous claim, it's probably outrageous. If it sounds outrageous, it probably is. And I'm a big believer that the truth is someplace in the middle. It does a lot of the stuff that it says it does, but they don't talk about the things that it doesn't do or that it struggles with. And you have to ferret that out. And again, I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I'm just trying to inject a little bit of pragmatism and a little bit of due diligence to it. Because we're going to find out. Trust me. If we buy it and we go to run it, we're going to find out. But then it's going to cost me $100 to fix it. The why is really important. I often remind people that, IT people, we don't eat our young, right? And we love our children too, and we want them to go to college just like everybody else does. And if you help us understand why you want to do the things they're doing, then we'll be a lot better informed, we'll have a lot more context around, okay, this is how I should help and why I should help. I can't tell you how many times in IT shops you will hear IT professionals going, oh my God, I can't imagine why they want to do that because this is stupid. Well, it isn't stupid, right? I mean, humans are not fundamentally stupid, right? They're not always right, but they're not fundamentally stupid. Very rarely do I get service requests that say something like, we would like to pick the building up and move it to the other side of Route 3, right? I mean, usually when I'm asked for something, there's a good reason for it. It may not always be right, and it may not always be advisable, and it may not always be done, but it's usually there's a reason, right? If you help us understand that, you get a lot less pushback, and a lot more, oh, you don't want to do that. Just tell us, right? I promise, we don't fight, I promise. And then the last thing, this happens all the time, and especially with highly consumerized tools, it's very easy to do, is just go on our own. So you come to me and say, hey, we would like to use Dropbox to put all of our critical documents in, and we want to be able to share it with all these other people. And I will say, yeah, it's not a good idea. And the reason it's not a good idea is because it's a gigantic security risk. And if that Dropbox, which we've already penetration tested and found that we can crack it about as easily as you can crack a walnut with if the marketing plan for the next unreleased new product is out there and stolen, that's bad. And you know what? You can go out and set that Dropbox up tomorrow, and there's nothing I can do about it. Right? I would urge you not to do that. Don't go rogue. Right? Now, if your CIO is not as progressive and high-minded and thinking as I am, right, you might have to convince her a little bit, right? But going rogue is only going to cause problems. Because, for one, you're going to get caught at some point. It's going to happen, trust me. Right? It's going to happen. And when it happens, it builds up that feeling. Because now I'm like, I told you no, and you did it anyway. Now I'm absolutely motivated to help you with the next thing. One. Right? So, don't go rogue. I mean, just don't go rogue. It will be much more productive and helpful. And ask me why. Why don't you want to Dropbox? And finally, if I explain it to you that way, you're probably going to give it. You're going to go, Jesus, good point. I don't really want the marketing plan for the next unreleased product that's going to take us public stolen. That would be bad. We're going to have to come to some conclusion because, by the way, your problem didn't go away. Okay, Jay, but fine. If we don't want to do that, then how are we going to share that document? Because it's really important that we share the document, stay in sync with the marketing agencies and the PR. Got it. Okay, let's go find one. Okay, let's find one that I can't crack like a walnut, right? And then we'll solve that problem together. But if you go rogue, now it's out of my hands. And then you've kind of bridged you've kind of broken the trust barrier. And so here's how I think I can help you. So we can talk about a technology roadmap. So this is what, I think people, CIOs, we don't do much, right? This is the dirty little secret, and I know you guys know. We don't do all that much. Like when you wonder, what's a CIO do? Right? But this is one of the few things that we actually do, right? So we're pretty good at putting together long-term architectures and roadmaps about how we get from today to some X number of months and years. We're good at that. We're good at thinking about it. We're good at integrating it. We're good at budgeting it. We're good at resourcing it and thinking about it, right, and making sure that things stay together and making decisions in year 1 that will work in year 3. So we're good at that, and we can help with that. And because we don't have that much to do, like become an asset, we'll help. Because we're great, now I know what to do at 2 o'clock. I don't have to go place for lunch. It's great. We can vet technologies and solutions. So that kind of shiny object thing. So because we understand where similar kinds of technologies and products have broken in the past, we're pretty good at asking questions about that. And we're pretty good at kind of poking for validity and for appropriateness. And so let us do that because we're much more experienced at it. Just as you wouldn't want me poking at a public relations agency about their PR campaign because I'm not fluent there. I mean, I'm a reasonably intelligent human being. I can ask some good questions, but not the right questions. The same thing happens on the IT side. We can help sell it internally, and we can play bad cop. And so I would not dismiss the value of bad cop, because especially when you're dealing with larger firms, I mean, Oracle is expert at vendor negotiation, and they are expert at feeding you into agreements that you're not going to be happy with. You can go to war with your vendor yourself, the people that you have to actually then, after the budget war is over, you actually have to sit across the same table and implement it together. Or you can let me be the bad guy, and you can take the high road and go. They have to approve it, right? I mean, so use that, right? I think connecting, we talk a lot about the integration. Like, let us worry about where else we need to connect it and how we're going to connect it and when we're going to connect it when the time comes. That's a place that we can help. And the ongoing support model, because the big part of the iceberg, the under the waterline part of the iceberg is the ongoing support. Because once that sucker's up and going and the shiny bottle is off, then marketeers want to go do marketeering, right? But there's software upgrades that have to happen, and there's bugs that have to be reported, and there's user training that has to happen, and there's all this stuff. And trust me, right? If you're not mentally prepared to do that, and if you're not staffed, you're not going to like it, right? This is what IT shops do. Help desks. We have help desks for a reason, right? Let us help you set up the model. Maybe we'll take some of the responsibilities. Maybe others of the responsibilities you have to own. But this is what we do, so we can help you with that. And I think that's a service and a valuable service for you because the support doesn't go away. And what ultimately happens is, and it's not just marketing, it happens all over a corporation, somebody buys it, then it gets implemented, then they get tired of it, and then they punt it over the wall, right? And all of a sudden it's an IT problem. So we hate that. I mean, we hate that because we know it's coming. We talk about it up front, everybody ignores it, and then it happens. Okay. So Carol, you want to talk about partnership?
Let's talk about partnership. So I agree with everything you said. and this is exactly where this partnership can come into play. And I love to tap into the things that Jay can do, right? So I need to figure out what do I need? What's the technology that I need? What are the challenges that I'm having? How am I going to figure out if this is successful or not? And actually, sometimes I can really rely on Jay to help with that too. But what do I need? I need to figure out the budget. I do need to budget for a lot of this stuff because it's part of what it costs me to go to market. It's part of what it costs me to create the collateral. It's part of what it costs me to generate leads. And so I do need to budget for this and have a budget for it. It just doesn't mean that I necessarily have to manage all the technology. And I do need to work a lot with our outsourced partners. We do a lot of stuff that's SaaS and marketing, more and more. And so the day-to-day, am I getting what I need from a business standpoint, is very important to delivering. But then when I have technical challenges, that's where I can rely on Jason. Like a really good example for us recently is we use Marketo and we use NetSuite, which is an interesting combination. And we didn't used to have Jet. And we have an integration between those two systems that was just kind of broken. And I was starting to have to hire more and more interns just to keep this thing going. I could just see every week I'd come into what we have called weekly status, and I'd have to talk about how everything's going in marketing. One of the things I have to say is, well, the integration isn't really working, so we don't really know what happened last week. But Jay came to the rescue and now we've been able to cut days out of the process, if you can believe this. It used to take a couple days to process leads coming in, and Jay and his team have made that miraculously better for us. So that's exactly the kind of partnership that we think works really well, and where marketers need to be moving this relationship with the CIO, right? So we have to know our business, we have to know what we need. Jay's team can't understand at a very deep level marketing, sales, finance, and know what you need today. But if you know what you need and you can partner with them, then they can help you. And I don't have enough integration projects to hire someone like Kelly on Jay's team, but I can tap into him, so that's really helpful for us. And how about for you?
And so for me, I think the pieces that I can bring again are architecture, so the kind of the stuff that sits under, below the water, right, the plumbing. And that plumbing, again, your house is a showpiece, but if you can't run water and the lights don't go on, it isn't worth much, right? I mean, we all understand that. So this is the kind of, right, so leads just aren't getting into salespeople's hands. I mean, that's a plumbing problem.
That's a bad thing.
So the good news is we're generating a crap load of leads. The bad news is they aren't going anywhere. So that's like putting water into a backed up sink, right? So it's not working. And so I think the integration, the managing the stuff that sits under, and just kind of the advising on program management or on prioritization. I mean, I think those things that sit underneath that make it repeatable and that make it easy to integrate new things that happen in our environment, because the only thing I know is that tomorrow will be different than today. I can't predict how, why, or when. I can just predict that it's going to happen. So if we think about it holistically and we think about it kind of comprehensively, and we have an architecture that's scalable, then Carol can bring it to it instead of me going, we can't integrate that because it's chocolate and we have a vanilla cake. Then if we think about that in advance, right, then when you come with chocolate, we'll go, all right, well, we're going to put that in the chocolate side, and we'll put the vanilla in the vanilla side, and that will just be much smoother.
Yes. And the reason it's so important, the reason, again, yes, go ahead, have a technology person to help you get through that technology landscape and focus on what kinds of technologies you ought to be bringing in. But if you're not working with the CIO, you have this situation where not only are you disconnected, but your customers are feeling disconnected. They're having a bad experience because they told you something on the website, and your salespeople are like, what were you interested in? And have no idea. And it's not their fault, but you didn't do a good job of integrating. Or, you didn't get the information to finance, or you didn't get the files to your agency in time. Whatever it might be, you end up in a really disconnected world. And you're not excellent. Suddenly you've got mediocrity, right? You are not an excellent company by any stretch of the imagination. So we just think it's so critical to have this partnership. So are they on a collision course? No, we don't think so. We think it's all about moving forward in alliance. Very critical. Technology is only going to become more important to marketing. So what this means is I need to continually get more technically savvy. I need to understand how technology can help me achieve my goals. And it means I need Jay to really understand the needs and what we're trying to do and make sure he and his team are really deeply ingrained in the business, which they are.
Right. It's not evil. Asking for our service is not evil. Right. It's okay.
It's not evil. And they're responsive. So how can you go build a roadmap with your CIO? I think it comes down to really understanding what matters to your business and your customers. Where do your customers go for information? What do they really care about in terms of the level of experience? How can you make their job easier? There's a lot of research recently on something called the customer effort score, and I really believe in that. So I need to be thinking about technologies that make it a lot easier for my buyers to get through their buying process. And we need to make it a lot easier for our buyers to have a good experience with the products and services they've invested in. And I also have to make sure I'm focused on things that have real business impact. And this could be a little bit of a challenge even with my own team, because they'll see those shiny objects and they'll be like, we need da 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 da, and I'll say, and tell me about how that's going to have business impact. All kinds of things that they might want to put on the website that really our buyers don't care that much about. So it's constantly harking back to those things.
Yeah, I think the most dangerous words in technology are, you know what would be cool? It starts with, you know what would be cool?
But I also think it's very important to have an innovation budget, and if you don't have one in marketing, I would highly encourage you to have one. Some of that's for media and different things you want to try, but I think having a technology innovation budget is really critical because you've got to constantly be testing out new things, whether it's with social media or it's with collaboration or whatever it might be. You've got to be able to try things and be nimble. I think it's really important.
And I think that's the great thing about one of the great things about the consumerization of the tools is it's easy to try now.
Yeah.
I mean, in the old days, you needed 3 months of IT set up to build a server and a test environment. Right? Now you can fire it up with a credit card and try it. Right. So I think that's the enablement that you're looking for, and your ability to think about it and innovate and play with it on your own is better than it's ever been. And I would encourage that. Right. But don't leap from it's cool, we like to do it, into now we're in production, right? That's the dangerous bridge that I think has to be right.
Absolutely, and unless you build that business case, which Jay and the team are also really useful at, we've done a little testing and we can show what the results are. Because the other thing I've had a lot of experience with sometimes buying into a technology that I don't really have the resources to run on an ongoing basis, and that can be a really, really, really bad thing. So. That's it for us. And I think did we successfully leave 10 minutes for questions? I think we did.
We have about 5 minutes for questions.
So we'll open it up. What can we tell you? What were you saying? Maybe we should start with your next comedy schedule, like where you're going to so people can follow you.
I have a question. How have you solved your problem with Dropbox and those types of solutions that are, they're widespread and it's very hard to block?
So it's not solved. I mean, the short answer is it's not solved. And so this is not, I promise, this is not a commercial for Rapid7. So we've developed some of our new products actually let you look at this thing called User Insight. Let you look at what services people are using, right? And so as the CIO, it's horrifying. It's incredibly informative, but it's horrifying to just run a list of. So we're using, I think, 7 different collaborative services. People from our network are using 7 different collaborative services. Now, all for innocent and good reason, right? Some more effective than others. So I think to the degree that we can say, look, here's one that we've certified and that we're going to put our resources and our support behind. We're going to make it easy for you. We're going to help you understand it. We're going to move stuff for you. But at the end of the day, if you have a credit card and an internet connection, I can't forbid you from doing it, right? So I don't believe you can hold back the ocean, and I don't believe that you can live in a police state. So my thinking always is, let me give you a good enough tool that you don't need to go find it, right? My job is not to try to hold you off from other things, but to make the one that we're using really good, so you'd be like, why would I go do something else? People don't go rogue because they have an independent streak. It's because they're frustrated. They're not the enemy, they're actually heroes. Because they're like, I don't like the fact that there's no answer here, so I'm going to go get an answer of my own, right? So it's always dangerous. It's a dangerous sign for a CIO when you see people doing this, and because they're not the enemy, it means something's wrong in your house, right? And so I can't stop it, but if I identify a solution, and I train, and I publicize, and I support, and I make it attractive, then that's the best ammunition I have to try to keep you kind of in the family. But at the end of the day, if you've got a credit card and an internet connection, you can do whatever you want, right? And that's dangerous.
Yeah. But that visibility is important too, because sometimes it's that people don't know you have this technology in place. I've seen that in really big companies with a lot of marketing technology where Europe doesn't even know that we've already invested in a particular tool, and if you can see that,
Right.
then you know, all right, you can go address that issue and get them to use the tool.
So say, absent a police state, do you publish any sort of policy? Don't let data walk out the door.
Yeah, I mean, especially for us. So we're a security company, so we're hypersensitive to that. But that's what it is. And so we kind of, this Dropbox thing is a real life example, right? Because we've established that kind of corporate relationship with Box.com, right? So that we have lots of reason and motivation to use Box.com. But kind of my first thing was, okay, but so the product marketeers, right? They're all hot to trot, and we need to get going, and blah blah blah. And so I slowed them down a little bit with, okay, but we need kind of an acceptable use policy, right? So what is okay to put out into that environment, and what's not okay to put out in that environment? And I'm not trying to be a obstructionist, and I'm not trying to be the police, right? But we shouldn't really put financial records out there, right? If you're going to put it in the public domain, and believe me, that's a public domain, right? We just have to be careful of it, right? And I think it's an education thing. People violate by accident, not by intent, right? There's no nefarious intent. They just didn't realize that they shouldn't do it. So we're actually pretty good about security awareness in our company because that's what we do for a living. But in average companies, people just don't do that. And then you can't yell at them afterwards. It's an education thing and it's an awareness thing, I think, more than anything else. I don't think people will do the right thing if they understand what the right thing is. I mean, I really believe that. I fundamentally believe that in some people. And so, but it's a constant awareness thing. It's constant awareness.
How much time do you guys spend creating that awareness, marketing those tools work?
So probably not as much as we should.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true.
Probably not as much as we should. I mean, when it's a security-related topic, I mean, we're kind of, that's like offering, steak to a dog, right? We get that, right? That's kind of a layup. But I do think, especially in smaller places where there's an entrepreneurial spirit, which is sometimes a euphemism for FU, I want to do what I want to do, but we call it entrepreneurial spirit. It's hard because people want to move forward. I mean, they really do, right? And so I think to the degree that you can educate, it's okay. But there's so many things going on in our company. Honestly, it's pretty hard to keep track and to focus and to have enough resource to say, we're a small company. At the end of the day, in the grand scheme of the world, we're pretty small, and it's pretty hard to keep up with that. So I would say not enough. By the way, I'd say at all the bigger companies that I work at, I would probably tell you the same thing. It's an underappreciated.
So I had to step out for a minute, get back some apologies if someone ever asked a question. But when you mentioned earlier about don't go rogue, right? The CIO advice to the company. Do you take that further and actually lock down, or do some companies actually lock down access to certain consumer apps, whether it's Facebook or Dropbox or whatever? I guess your perspective on that. In some cases, for marketing, they need access to social media tools to monitor and to et cetera. But at the same time, maybe you don't want the whole company screwing around on Facebook all day.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on your company's culture and your company's values and your company's employees. So I've been in places where we locked it all down, and you can kind of do it. I mean, you can't really do it if your people are clever, or they have teenage children. Then they'll avert all of your security. At the end of the day, I do believe in the general goodness of people, and I do believe that education a book is a stronger weapon than a gun. And I don't like to lock things down because I think it's virtually impossible to do it, and so I think it's a lot of wasted effort. I think if you just tell people, look, it's just like in the old days with the telephone. I mean, I actually worked at a company once where there was no personal telephone calls. I mean, now that's just, and this is the days before cell phones. Now, it's just fundamentally stupid. It's fundamentally stupid. I think if you said to people, listen, this is a place of business, and we have expectations of you as an employee and productivity. So if I see you on Facebook all day, and your stuff isn't getting done, we're probably going to have a problem. If your stuff gets done and you're on Facebook for an hour, really, I got better things to worry about. And I think culturally, these are much more acceptable kinds of things. In our office, if we didn't have the internet, we'd be out of business.
Right.
We prospect on the internet. We prospect in social media. LinkedIn is like the new holy grail, right? If LinkedIn never went down, my God, all commerce is fine. So I just don't think it's realistic anymore. I think there are certain places where you have to have certain rules. I was in the defense business for a while. When you're in the defense business, you have to do stuff, right? But at the end of the day, a book is a stronger weapon than a gun. And I just think that you have to rely on people to educate them and rely on their responsibility. That's what I think.
I agree.
I have a question just around budgeting and ROI. So Carol, over your career, do you find now the tools that you have that ROI is more sort of definable in sort of marketing spend? It's always been sort of CFO's kind of nightmare and black box, right? Trying to ascertain ROI.
That's a great question. I'd say yes and no. I think it's definitely come a long way in terms of being able to calculate ROI. You know, a good example is we're experimenting in our budget, which was penetration tested by the way, with a tool called Bounce Exchange. And what that does is when people are trying to, or not trying to, but as people start to go off your website, it'll pop up a message. I don't know if this happened to you, Jerry, but you come to our website, if you are starting to say, I don't really see what I want, or I want to go do something else, and you start to go away, we give sort of it's like a last-ditch effort to get you to engage a little bit further. And it's one of those things where the person I have running that was able to say, well, how many conversions did we get? But then we are also able to say, but is that incremental, or would those people have come? So those kinds of things I think you can get down to. But I would say in the state of B2B, it's still pretty hard to get to true absolute ROI because 5.6 people on average from every account engage with us through marketing before they even get sort of tagged as a sales opportunity by sales. And that might happen over 3 months. It might happen over 2 years before they become an opportunity. So it's still, I think, true marketing ROI is a little elusive down to every single interaction, and it drives the